kind of been in like major survival mode, and what do I share with people? And I just want to be more open and more honest and share appropriate things. And what I want my focus to be is that God is faithful and God is good through the muck and the junk and through all of it, through the pain. And I believe that there is beauty, that God makes beauty out of the ashes of our lives.
Welcome to the Run to the Hard podcast, where we're here to remind you that God doesn't promise us a life free from suffering, but he always brings healing and restoration on the other end. Our goal is to inspire you to face life's trials with courage and trust in God's plan. And run to the hard that God allows. Welcome back to the Run to the Hard podcast, everybody. I'm Chris Farrell, and I'm here with Curtis Christopher, the content king of the podcast.
I don't know about all that.
How you feeling, man? I mean, we're releasing a lot here on these episodes. Obviously, it's been emotional.
Yeah, that was rough. Physically, mentally, I was just exhausted. That was rough. That was a lot. Yeah. I visited the chiropractor, I think, 2 more times that week, and I was a mess. He said, "What have you been doing?" I said, "Great question. I can't wait to share with you what I've been doing." He says, "It must have been stressful because you are a wreck."
Oh, man. That's
But anyways, that's part of the story. The other one was, I'm not even a year and a half out. The grief, I'm still working through it. And feel like I'm not firing on all cylinders, feel like my brain activity is not where it's supposed to be. But it was interesting, as you kept asking the questions, I mean, you were helping me remember my wife, and I was remembering stories and things and from even before that. And so hard, but super good. Lots of tears. But yeah. It's good. I'm starting to get excited about this. I've been excited about something for a while. And so, a lot of mixed emotions.
Like I mentioned in our previous episodes, releasing this material a year and a half in, I mean, not only is it difficult emotionally, but for you to be in a place where you're still in grief and then to be as vulnerable as you've been has been super powerful. And in our quest to put together this episode, I don't ever give you the questions up front.
No,
right?
You don't.
Exactly. And I do that on purpose because there's nothing better than a conversation where we are podcasting and it's just real and raw.
Right.
And so recently we were talking about vulnerability and how that's been obviously tough for you. And on this episode, we're going to cover God's perfect timing and trusting God in that timing, even when it doesn't match our timing and it doesn't make sense to us. So something that goes right in line with God's timing and not understanding why and vulnerability is, this is really, really relative to me. So here's the deal, man. I've been noticing, and I can't not notice this anymore, and I can't lie to myself, but I'm balding. Dude, I'm balding.
As you look at me.
I'm balding, and I thought, who better to give me advice than this man here, okay? Because look, I'm 33, and I just feel like the Lord's timing is off, okay? I should probably be like 50 or something, right? And so, number one, I got to ask you, when did you start balding?
Oh, man.
And is this just a way for God to humble great men?
Well, boy, I've got some appropriate and some inappropriate answers to your question about balding.
It is what it is.
No, I was in college. I remember I was in college, and I was so distraught because all of a sudden I had this little spot in the back of my head. I was like, you got to be kidding me. And so I never forget, I went home, and that's when Rogaine first started coming out. And it was $50 a month back in 90, let's see, $89, $90. Oh yeah, that was expensive. I mean, it was a lot back then. When you're a college kid, $50 a month was a big deal. And
Yeah.
so I was like, Mom, I gotta get this. We gotta try it out. And it worked for a little while, but eventually balding just happens, and you can't really take it out. So by the time I graduated, my spot was a little bit bigger, and then I got married, and it got a little bigger, and then I had kids, and it got a little bigger, and so it's definitely that's funny because. For men, I don't know if people realize for men, it is a big deal to your confidence. It's a big deal to your overall appearance, and you think about it. And anyways, there came a point where I'd seen enough guys do the whole wrap, the comb over.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, I was probably I'm trying to remember how old I was. I was in my 30s. Came home one day, and I handed my daughter my razor, and I put it on like one. And I said, hey, shave Daddy's head. And she was like, what? And I was like, yeah, just cut it all off because I'm not going to be that guy that works on the comb over. We're just going to take it off. And so from that day forward, man, I'm like a 2. I'm like a number 2 on the razor. And I've cut from that day till now. Yeah. That's been 20 years. I've never been to the barber. I just cut my own hair.
Actually,
let's
talk about the cost savings here.
Oh, yeah, it's huge.
I've always wondered how much money I would save if I learned to cut my own hair, but I guess this is God's sick way of just, helping me out financially by not having to do all these cuts. Well,
that's so funny.
See, here's the thing. I've been denying it. I saw a picture of my 32nd birthday. It's like, is my hairline receding? No, there's no way. But I have a bald grandfather on both sides. My dad got hair, so he's the lucky one. And I'm just, I've always feared it because my wife has always said that she would leave me, and and so that joke is now becoming a little more harsh.
Oh man, that's so funny.
So we'll see what happens. Yeah. I'll be sure.
It's definitely a conversation piece along the way. You learn to deal with it.
Oh, dude, it's so. But you know what? The best part about this is, in this day and age, I figure if I live my truth that I have hair, and I identify as having hair, then I'll be okay.
Oh my
right?
word. Yeah, you go for that.
Okay. All right. Cool. Oh, so anyway, speaking of God's timing, that's actually perfect because part of this conversation of God's timing and me going bald early and rushing God's timing, like when you go bald and then you go for the Rogaine and all that stuff, and it only works for a little bit, but in the end, God's timing is still perfect, right? And so a lot of people want to know where you were at, Curtis, when you were biblically justified for divorce, and you are now in the in-between phase between your ex-wife and meeting Michael.
Sure.
And so, man, share with us that timing and all the things that went into that.
Well, first of all, there were, I don't ever want to leave out amazing God moments. I think part of our testimony as we work through this journey is to even document, man, when you have a God moment, write it down. Because, we do forget things. We get busy. Life is busy. But I've been faithful to at least write these thoughts down and some of these really big God moments. But we were divorced. I also am trying to keep timelines because timelines help me in my story. October of 18.
Okay.
And so pretty rough place. Obviously, friends, employees, employers, everybody knew that I was going through a divorce, but I was really struggling with telling the world, telling outside friends, telling college friends, people that just didn't know. The thing about growing up and having kids and a family is that your bubble gets smaller and smaller, and then some of those acquaintances and stuff that, they're living life, they're doing everything. And so you don't stay in close communication all the time. And a lot of people just didn't know. And I was struggling with telling people. And I'll never forget writing it remember, I'm not a Facebook person. But one night I was wanting to do kind of an end of the year because there were a lot of good things that happened. Kids getting engaged, kids getting married, starting a new business, even on my own. And I wanted to post about it and just in my own way tell the world that, hey, there's some good things going on. But at the same time, I had never used the word divorce in any kind of a post or anything public. And I was like, do I do it now? Is this when I do it? And I struggled. And finally, I put going through divorce, blah, 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 but God's still faithful. There's a lot of great things going on. And I shared that. And I immediately felt this huge burden lift of, okay, I've told the world what I thought of the, that I'd shared with the world. But that was a big moment of being able to just share it so people knew. And I would say shortly after that, a good family psychologist friend, great guy, takes me to breakfast, and he knows I'm struggling. And it was another one of those God moments where he said, hey, I want you to get out a piece of paper and a pen. And I'm like, okay, what for? And he's like, I need you to start making a list. And I said, a list for what? He's a good friend, but he's also a family psychologist. And I'm like, okay, what do you want a list for? And he said, listen, you've just been divorced. You're not even months into this. This is the perfect time to start making a list of what kind of person would you want in the future? And first of all, I got mad. I was like, I can't even think that way. He said, doesn't matter. He said, you're broke. He said, you're hurting. He said, all these things are fresh in your mind. He said, you need to make a list. And I said, well, what does the list look like? He said, it needs to say, here's the things that I would love to have in my life someday. Here's the things that are absolute no-nos. You've lived enough life now that without a shadow of a doubt, you don't want X, Y, and Z. I said, okay, that's fair. And so over the next few weeks, I started writing this list. I hated it because making a list means you're opening yourself up to maybe someday I would have somebody else in my life, right? And so that thought just, I struggled with it. But eventually I get this list of, man, these are the things that I would really want in another person. Here's the things that are non-negotiable no's. And I remember getting to the end of it and just sticking it in my phone and periodically looking at it, maybe taking something away, adding something to it, but it was in my phone. And so it was a done deal at that point. And a couple months go by and you start to think, I wonder if so-and-so would go out to coffee, or I wonder if, maybe I should reconnect with so-and-so. And then, when you're 50 years old and you start thinking about dating again, it's awful. In fact, it's terrifying. And finally, I just came to the conclusion, I can't. I don't want to go down that road right now.
Why is that? Were you concerned about your son and daughter? Was it you just didn't feel like you had the emotional capacity?
All of the things. Okay. You talk yourself out of, well, what if this didn't work out? Well, that person knows so-and-so and knows so-and-so, and, I'd hate for that to, you literally talk.
Especially in a small town.
Oh, small town is the worst.
Okay.
And yeah, your kids, what are they going to think? And all those things. So finally I just was like, okay, God, I can't do this. And so if you ever had somebody for me, you're just going to have to drop them in my lap, because I wasn't going to do a dating app. I wasn't going to do anything like that. And so I basically resolved myself to, I'm just not going to enter the dating world. Not now, for sure. And, but anyways, 2 God moments, make a list. And I wrote that one down in a journal. The second God moment was me committing and saying, okay, God, no dating. I'm just going to leave that up to you. And so even though that sounds really simple, I think a lot of people can get to that point on their own. But for me, it was another commitment to God. Like, God, this is yours. I don't want to mess this up.
So when it came to the initial God moment of making a list, when this, what was it, a counselor? Mm-hmm. I'm sorry. When this counselor asked you to make a list, you did not desire to date. You did not think you were getting back in the dating scene. Oh, no.
So I was divorced in October. This was probably November when I made that post about sharing with people that I was divorced, and then right around that same time as when he met. So we're only talking about a couple, 3 months. Yeah, so I'm not in a good place in any of those categories.
Interesting why he would ask you to make a list that quick. Did you ever find out why?
Well, yeah. So, oh man, I can share his name. Dr. Miller is amazing. He and his wife. So he was a Christian counselor, married for years. His kids get to college age and their marriage falls apart. and his wife, they get a divorce, and he thinks his career's over. Here he is, a Christian counselor. He's counseled hundreds, if not thousands, of young families, and he can't even keep his own marriage together. Okay, and to have him, he's written a book himself. To hear him share his story is gut wrenching. But then, after it happens, his business explodes, and he looks at me and said, "Curtis, those were some of the best opportunities I had to share because I went through it."
Wow.
You want to talk about a nugget?
That's
He
really
looked
good.
me in the eye and said, "I now could experience what these people were going through, and they trusted me, and my business exploded." And I was like, wow.
Yeah.
And then
It's amazing.
he meets a really neat lady, Dr. Joy Shields. She delivered my daughter at Berger Hospital.
Wow.
And those two, people from the church connected these two. She had been through a terrible divorce. Those two come together. They're a power couple. They're unbelievable. God's all over this marriage. They've written about it. They've talked about it. They've shared it in seminars. Anyways, this is the guy who's telling me, write a list. So I have respect for him. So when he says write a list, I'm like, okay, because, you've kind of been there before. You've done some things.
Sure.
I don't want to do it, but I'll trust you. The key is he did the same thing. He wrote a list.
Got it. So had he always been your counselor, or did you seek him out because of his experience and knowing he could relate?
Just church connections.
Okay.
We knew them, and honestly, at the last minute, he was kind of a last ditch effort, even in our marriage,
Yeah.
to see if there was anything to salvage. And so,
Gotcha.
yeah, there was a point where he actually did counsel us for a little while, but then this was just a friendly breakfast. Calls me up, "Curtis, let's go to breakfast. We need to chat." And this was the nugget that he gave me. Yep.
Got it. Love it. Okay, so make a list, even when you don't want to.
Yep.
I love it.
Yep.
And then I think it's implied that you were seeking help and
Sure.
somebody to talk to and counseling during this time because you knew that you couldn't just bear all of this emotional weight alone.
No, God would always put the right person at the right time. Man, that happened. Whew, that happened all the time. At my worst point, worst day, phone call, a text, a breakfast, a lunch. God was super faithful during that time. That was huge.
God's timing.
Yep, absolutely.
Love it.
Yep.
Love it. And then number 2 was you described this as a God moment of saying no dating.
Yeah, I couldn't do it. Every time I would try to convince myself, it's just coffee. What's the big deal?
Mm-hmm.
I just felt, I did. I felt God saying, timing's not right. And I was able to just say, God, you're going to have to just, if this is ever going to be a thing, it's going to be because you orchestrated it.
Got it. So take me forward a little bit. You're like, hey, it's not the right timing. I don't feel like God's blessed the timing for me to date. You're working with Dr. Miller. He's challenging you for what the future might hold. What happens next?
Let's see. Again, I have to go back through the timing. Divorced October, December, January, February. Around February, I get a message from a friend from college I hadn't talked to in 30 years. Mike Lingle is now the one of the development guys from our alma mater, and he'd reached out, told me about his new job, his new gig, wanted to reconnect and share. And I remember him saying, "Hey, did you get that invite to our college get together?" I said, "Yeah, I'm not real sure I want to do that," and I just kind of played it off. Didn't have the conversation with him. It was great to reconnect. We chatted, we talked for a while, but that was the end of the conversation. A couple weeks later, he calls me back and says, "You haven't RSVP'd your invite to this get together yet." I'm like, Mike, okay, I've got to tell you what's going on, and I've not wanted to, but dude, I've been through a terrible divorce. I'm miserable. The last thing I want to do is go to an alma mater event with a bunch of happy couples, even though the event was in Laguna Beach, California. I left that part out. It was an amazing place. Ooh. But I'm just like, I don't want to go. And I cried, and we shared, and we talked. We hadn't talked in years. And it was another God moment where it was a dark day. I can remember exactly where I was sitting, what I was doing when I got that phone call. And I remember, crying on the phone and explaining what was going on, and him saying, this is exactly why you have to come. He says, I'm there for you. It's going to be a great event. God's going to be all over it. We're going to have amazing speakers. Stephen Curtis Chapman's going to do the music. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, it's going to be amazing. You got to come. He said, I'll hang out with you. We'll just sit together. We'll cry together if we have to. We'll do whatever we got to do, but you got to come. And I reluctantly said, okay, all right. So I go and buy my plane tickets, and I fly out to Laguna Beach, okay? And it was, so there's number 3, God moment. I share with Mike what's going on. First time I'd shared with an outside person who wasn't in our small community, and he immediately says, no, this is exactly why you have to come, and God's going to be all over this thing. Just trust me on this. And so another timing issue, another God moment. I never forgot it.
That's so cool to me, because it's not easy to get rejected.
Oh.
And you rejected him.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
And he kept pressing in, knowing that you needed to pull yourself out of, just isolation,
Sure.
right? Were you isolating at that time? What were you doing with your time?
I'd quit everything by this time. I had stepped down from church board. I'd stepped down from community boards. I was on 2 or 3 community boards. I was on the church board. I was serving in different capacities, and just felt unworthy, felt broken. It's part of the process. It is a divorce thing where you go through, you go through a death. And so I was pretty isolated. I'd bought a little cabin up in Michigan, and I was disappearing almost every weekend. I would drive up there, 5-hour drive, and I'd work on it all weekend, just fixing it up, having some alone time. I did a lot of walking, a lot of praying during that time, but all that's going on at the same time. Yeah.
So somebody is listening to this, and they're in a similar spot to you were in.
Mm-hmm.
Give me some advice. How long do I isolate? Because some people do need to isolate for a second. You know what I mean? Is there a point where you know that you were isolating too long, where Mike got you at the right time to say, okay?
Oh man, but that's a God thing. That wasn't my doing. If it was my doing, I probably would have self-destructed had that gone longer than it did. So that's why I marked those as God moments, because God came in at the right time on the right day when I needed help the most. And so I don't know if I could have sought that out. It's not that there weren't people there available. Mm-hmm. I think there were 10 people in my phone I could have called on any one day.
Well, let me push you. Be a God moment for somebody listening right now. When do you know you've been isolating too long?
Sorry for the pause. God was always faithful. When I was at my worst, he would show up. So I was definitely in those moments where every time he would show up with the right person, with the right phone call, with the right text.
So maybe somebody listening to this that knows somebody that's going through this, reach out.
Oh, man.
Invite them to breakfast, right?
Please. Yep. Yeah, we all know somebody going through this. And I think one of the greatest lessons that Michael and others have taught me, but my wife, Michael, man, she was faithful to keep her ear to the ground, to pay attention to those in need. And she always asked the right question, or she'd wake up and say, I need to call so-and-so, or I need to text so-and-so. And so that's an area that she was ultra sensitive in. And sometimes she would just tell me, I just feel like I'm supposed to reach out to so-and-so. I'm going to call them, take them to coffee. And I said, well, that's awesome.
Love it.
Do it. And so that's part of our growth in Christ, is when we become sensitive to the needs of others. And so, the circle of people that I had in my life were those people, and they were sensitive, and they always called, and they always came in at the right time. And so something that I'm learning to do, I'm trying to do. My wife modeled it so well, and even now, even in the middle of grief, I still wake up and there's people that come to mind, and I'm trying to be sensitive to their needs. And if the Lord says do it, I'm just doing it. I'm trying not to fight it. It doesn't matter what I'm going through that day. they must need it worse than I do. And so
good.
Yeah.
That's so good, man. So I didn't mean to pull
No,
us all
I
the
get
way
it.
back there.
No, I
but,
get it.
I just really felt like there was something important for someone
Sure.
listening here.
Yeah.
Going through those emotions, people who are either going through it or know someone going through it. So the actionable step there is reach out.
Yep.
Okay.
Please reach out. Somebody needs it.
Good. So Mike invites you to Laguna Beach. You fly out.
It was good.
What happens?
I mean, it's Laguna Beach. The hotel's right on the ocean. It's beautiful. The weather's perfect. We have amazing speakers. Our college president delivered some amazing messages, and so there were definitely God moments. So God brought me there through Mike to reconnected with some old friends, reconnected with some of the administration at the college, and that part was good. Didn't take away from where I was, emotionally, mentally. I was still struggling. But there were definitely God moments. There were some decisions made. But here comes another huge God moment. Never saw this coming. It still blows me away today to even think about it. It's the last night of the event. I'm feeling sorry for myself. I'm up in my room, and the crazy thing is this room they put me in, I mean, I couldn't, when I walked in, I was like, are you kidding me, God? This is nuts. I'm literally looking out over the pool that's looking out over the ocean.
I love it.
Dead center of this amazing hotel. And it was an amazing view. It was an amazing place to be. But, last night, I'm feeling sorry for myself. I should be out on a walk. I should be walking up and down the beach. I should be enjoying the sunset. But instead, I'm just sitting on my phone and I'm scrolling Facebook, which is a whole story by itself because up until, 2019, I didn't hardly use it. It wasn't my thing. And so I'm not a Facebook guy. I think my ex-wife actually is the one who signed me up. We both worked at the college. And so, that was the college thing back in the day, and I think I used it to promote like our basketball seasons and stuff like that. When you guys played for me, I think I talked about tournaments or whatnot, but honestly didn't use it a whole lot. And so I'm scrolling Facebook, I'm laying in bed, and I come across, it's kind of a dark video. There's this lady, and it is a video. There's a lady and she's talking and she's inside her vehicle. And I click on it, of all things. I click on this video of this woman, and she's pouring her guts out about going through a terrible divorce. Oh, man, there's so many interesting things about this video because, number one, I don't know her. I don't know who she is. I don't know why she's in my feed, okay? But I click on it, and she, for the first time, is sharing with her world that she's going through a divorce, which immediately hooks me because I just did this for the first time, just a month or two ago. I said, okay, the word's divorced in a post, trying to celebrate the good things that were happening in my life, but at the same time, letting the world know that maybe they didn't know that I was going through it. So I immediately felt for her because I realized this was the first time she was doing the same thing. I listened to it a little bit longer, and I don't think I ever got through the whole video, but I was drawn because I had two other friends back home that also were going through a divorce, and the three of us, we would talk with each other, we'd pray for each other, we'd stay in touch. And so I wrote this quick little note, which is so not me. Hey, so-and-so, I'm really sorry. I don't know you, don't know your situation, but I do know what you're going through, have been there and still going through it, have some friends going through it. Can I just add your name to our prayer list, as we pray for each other? And that was it. Well, I typed this little note up in my phone, and then I freak out, and I throw my phone down on the bed, and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, this is not you. You're not a Facebook stalker. You don't go looking for women online. I'm mad at myself. Like, what are you doing? And so I throw my phone down. I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm not that guy. Like, who does that? She doesn't know me. And so I go to bed, and I'm miserable. And 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock rolls around. I look at the clock, and I'm like, I just need some sleep. 3 o'clock in the morning, guys, whether you believe this or not, I just have to tell you what God did. He said, send the message. And I was like, Lord, I don't think that's a good idea. And God and I have a little argument. He said, send the message. I'm like, Lord, that's not me. I'm not this online person. I've already, anyways. And he says, send the message. So finally I picked my phone up and I said, okay, I have this little prayer. I said, God, I don't know this person. I don't know their situation. I'll send it, but you're going to have to deliver it accordingly because I'm not that guy. And I hit send and go to bed. The weirdest thing. So, God moment, God moment, God moment. And then who would have thought that this would be a God moment, that he has me send a random stranger a message of prayer going through a divorce? Nutso.
So when you say God spoke to you, was this like you couldn't think of anything but send the message? Explain that a little more.
No, it's good because people talk about an audible voice, and it's in your mind. It's not like a audible voice in your ear, but it's definitely in your mind, and you've been awake and you're miserable. And so one thing I learned years ago was how God spoke to me, and usually it was internal. It was a gut thing. It was God would make me miserable, sometimes sick to my stomach, where until I did the thing that he asked me to do, and as soon as I did it, the pain, the misery, all the pieces would disappear. And it was one of those moments. God said, send the message. I'm like, I don't want to, God.
Yeah.
Send the message. I'm like, God, this is a bad idea. Send the message. And, I sent the message, slept just fine, and I did what I was supposed to do. So knowing the voice of God is a big deal. And, man, we should talk about that sometime because early on in my life, I had to discover that voice because the misery of not following his voice was awful. Anyways.
You can't just say it. You can't drop a line like that and say anyways. No, man, that's awesome. That's awesome. And you're so right. I know there have been several times in my life where I'm like, Lord, is that you or is that not you?
Right.
But then I almost run it through this test of like filtering. Mm-hmm. Is this God's character? Is this aggressive, and would this honor him or serve somebody? And if it would, it probably is him.
Yeah, so you're smarter than I am because I am just stubborn, and God would have no. I'm serious. He would hit me upside the head with a 2x4 to get my attention.
Yeah,
and so the voice of God in my life over the years has been misery, where gut wrenching. I'm sick to my stomach, gonna vomit if I don't make this decision. And I'm serious.
That's good.
Over and over and over and over. That's how he spoke to me. Yeah.
Man, that's really good. That's really good. So you send this message to this random lady on Facebook who you're connecting with her story, and it's intriguing. Obviously, she's easy on the eyes, so it's easy to watch the video.
Which made it even weirder, which is why I was so apprehensive to want to even send something to a pretty lady that I don't know. That's a... That's a hard pill to swallow.
So you go to bed, not thinking anything of it.
Right, I'm done.
You wake up in the morning, and what?
So I get on a plane, fly home, and the next day, I know where I was. It's funny because not only do I have these timelines of God moments, but I also have these places. I remember where I was at, where I was standing, and my phone goes ding, ding, and it's the messenger noise, which I'm not familiar with because, again, not a Facebook guy. Let me pause for a second because, oh man, I was gonna try to save this for later, but I just have to now because it'll make it funnier.
Sure.
I'm not a Facebook guy, and I don't know that Facebook is her world. Okay, so just if anybody listening can understand that, this is a woman who had started an online business, and she used Facebook for a lot of marketing. She used it to connect to people. She used Messenger to connect to people. I don't know any of this because guess what? I don't know who this person is.
Right.
So now imagine that. So this person uses Facebook and Messenger to talk and communicate, to basically make money as their living and everything else. And then there's this poor schmuck over here who's confused and he's mad that he sent a message to this strange lady, which is not strange to her at all because she's used to communicating with people. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah.
I feel like if I set the stage and let people understand that, it makes the story even better. Yeah. So
highly communicative.
Yes.
Is always like just very extroverted personality.
Yes.
Always posting videos.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
So I learned all this much later,
right.
Of course. And so my phone goes ding, ding, and I look, and it has the little one beside the messenger icon. I'm like, okay, what's this? I click on it, and she responded. And my first thought was, oh, crap, because I went to bed. I did what I was supposed to do, had no intentions of ever getting a response or ever having to communicate with this person. I just did what I was supposed to do.
Right.
And so it's not only a messenger, it's a voice message. I didn't know Messenger can do that. I thought it was a text thing only. So here's this woman, I get to hear her voice, sweet, sweet lady, sweet voice, and she's just thanking me. Curtis, I really appreciate that. That was great. Yes. She actually said, that was one of the hardest things I've ever done. She said, as soon as I sent that message to the world telling them I was going through divorce, I wanted to vomit. I sat in the middle of my room and cried. Like, she's telling me this. And she said, so the fact that, you would just say anything, and yes, please add my name to your prayer list. I could use all the prayers I need. There's a big pause. I'm like, oh, great. That's it. I don't have to respond. She thanks me. So I send the message. She thanks me, and I'm done. I'm like off scot-free in my brain. Right. Understand what's going on, the dynamics. Big pause. And then it was, hey, so tell me about your kids. Like, how old are they? I see you've got kids. And I was like, oh no. She asked me a question. And I remember just fumbling, thinking, man, I wasn't prepared for this. Because go back to the moments prior to this. I'm not looking for a girl.
Nope.
Not dating. God, you're going to have to send somebody to me because I don't want to mess this up. God has these moments with me all the way up to this point, even to the point of making me send a random woman a message. And nowhere in my brain am I looking for a woman. I'm just trying to set the stage here so you understand, because I can see people listening take a look at Michael's picture online and be like, oh, man, this dude, he says these words, but I seen her face. Right. Are you with me?
Sure.
So I'm trying hard to paint this picture, but so I respond. It was awful. But anyways, I tell her a little bit about my kids, and next thing I know, we're just having these conversations, mostly about, the age of our kids. My kids are in college. Her kids are young. At that point, she has 5 kids. So I learned how many kids she has. We just start sharing back and forth a little bit about life. There was nothing, if people are wondering if this is a romantic relationship, it is not. This is a really basic, friendly relationship. However, I'm intrigued.
Sure.
Why is this woman talking to me?
Yeah.
Right?
At the time, did you wonder if this could go any further, or like you had been praying for God's timing? Yeah,
but I don't know anything about her. And
okay.
This I'm glad you asked that, because I had a list.
Yeah.
I had a list.
Right.
And my list was stringent.
Your list was what? I'm sorry?
Stringent. It was very pointed to the fact where I'm like, I'd have to know somebody really, really well to know if they even made my list.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Sure.
So I have this list now.
So you didn't start filtering it through the list yet?
Oh, not yet. No.
Okay.
This is just this friendly conversation. At the same time, I'm like, okay, who is this person? So now I'm looking at her Facebook, and I'm looking at her post, and I noticed 3 things right off the bat. Number 1, she's really deep, spiritually grounded. She is a great communicator. I was like, oh my word, who is this? And she was super pretty. So she's super pretty. She's a great communicator, super talented. And the farther I dug, I was like, oh my word. And I remember telling my friend Devin, I was like, hey, check this girl out on Facebook. And he's like, why? I was like, well, somehow, some way we've started this friendly conversation. He's like, what? And I'm like, no, just check her out. Look at her stuff. And he comes back and he says, man, she's like super talented. I'm like, I know. He says, do you know her? I said, not really. He said, you should try to hire her, because we had just started a business, and we were trying to figure out marketing and all that kind of stuff.
Sure.
And so Devin's first response is, you should try to hire her.
Exactly. Yeah.
True story.
So you mentioned he asked if you knew her.
Right.
People are probably wondering, how did you see this message if you didn't know her?
Oh my goodness. So that's why I preferenced the whole Facebook thing. So this is the best her and I could figure this out, because I kept saying, how is she in my feed? And then how in the world is she my friend on Facebook? And people are already like, oh, my word. True story. I don't know how she's my friend on Facebook. I didn't use Facebook. It wasn't something I used all the time. So what happened was back in 2017, she was starting an online business. And so she was going into our community. It's mostly church groups. And she was basically friending everybody. And so the more I researched, I was like, she's friends with all of my friends.
Right.
We're friends with like 150 people. How is that possible? And the more I researched, she's friends with my ex-wife. She's friends with my mother-in-law. She's friends with on and on and on and on. I'm like, what? This doesn't make sense. Well, back to the whole marketing piece. She was friending everybody in our community because she was building a brand, building a company.
Bold.
And
that's awesome.
But that's the funny part, is I don't quite understand all that world.
Sure.
But I'm having this communication with this lady, right? So everybody knows where this is going. My heart starts to get tugged, not knowing that I'm just another Joe Schmo in her marketing campaign.
Just a prospect, man.
It was awful
because
the funny part is you know,
you found that out way later.
Oh yeah,
okay.
Because at this point my heartstrings are starting to get tugged on. I'm like, who is this woman? I'm researching her. I'm going in looking at that.
Now you're actually creeping.
Now I'm creeping.
Now you're creeping.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I don't know that I'm just another Joe Schmo, prospect in her whole online world.
Sure.
And so that's why I wanted to preference the story this way, because you can see where this, where the fork in the road is, where I'm at, where she's at. Yeah. And so, later when we were married, she would say, babe, I'm really sorry. I'm sorry that you fell in love with the Facebook version of me.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, my gosh.
True story.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, that conversation came up a lot. But anyways, a few weeks go by and there's just been this, fun conversation. It was fun. She was funny. She was deep. We started talking about spiritual things, different things like that. And again, it's all messenger. There's no phone calls. There's no texting. Because here's another thing.
All messenger voice.
Well, I couldn't keep up with the voice part. Some of mine was a lot of texting, the text part, not the voice. But she was all voice all the time. Sure. Again, didn't know that was her avenue of communicating with her online world. Is she'd be driving and just, voice messaging people all the time, constantly. Is
it interesting that was her method of communicating via voice, and now you're communicating your story via voice?
Oh, man,
Come on now.
Yeah, I know.
Now it comes full circle.
Yeah, so again, we're on two different paths, and I don't quite understand how all this works yet. But at some point, her daughter, Ella, this is probably 4 weeks into this friendly conversation. Her daughter goes, Mom, who are you talking to? I noticed you're talking to somebody on a regular basis. And she says, oh, this guy in Circleville. And at this time, they had moved to Xenia. So going through a divorce, 5 kids. She's actually fixing up a house, which is interesting because we'll get into all that. She's fixing up a house, moving back to Xenia. Her family's there. And her daughter says, who is this you're talking to? And she says,
which is an hour from you, correct?
Which is an hour from me, okay. Yeah. And she says, oh, it's this guy. He's a friend. And Ella goes, Mom, if there's a guy messaging this much, he wants more than to be a friend. And I've actually had this conversation with both of them at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's funny because, Michael's a little bit innocent and a little naive. She was like, oh, no. And she says, Ella, do you think that's true? And Ella's like, Mom, seriously? Do I have to educate you about this stuff too? Right. And so then I get this really long, Dear John message. And the funny thing is Messenger is only 1 minute at a time. You can only do a 1 minute piece at a time. I get like 15 of them because she keeps running out of time because she can't get rid of me that fast.
Oh my God.
It's a lot of these ums and wells and, hey, I'm really sorry. I hope you didn't think something more than me just, and she kept, and by the way, I'm sure you're a nice guy. But yeah, I can't be more than just a Facebook friend. And, and it was so funny. By the time I listened to all 15, I'm dying laughing because she can't get rid of me. She's trying to get rid of me and she can't do it.
That's awesome.
And so finally she gets to the end. All that to say, I'll be your Facebook friend, but I can't messenger and talk to you anymore. I hope you understand. I'm sure you're a nice guy and blah, 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 blah. And finally I chime in. I'm like, listen, I think you're super smart lady. At least someday, maybe one day, can we at least have coffee? You know, I don't know what all's going on in your life. I don't understand all the pieces, but you've intrigued me enough. I'd love to have coffee with you someday. And so we end it with, yeah, maybe someday. That'd be a good idea. Someday, maybe we can have coffee together. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. So take me back to God's timing.
Whew.
Okay. You meet with Dr. Miller. It's 3 months after your divorce.
Mm-hmm.
You build this list. You're like, I'm not going to do anything with this
Right.
list. You say no dating, no trying. You know, you let the thoughts kind of go in different places, but you're like, nope, not going to happen. Then Mike Lingle pulls you to Laguna Beach, poor you, and
Right.
and you have this amazing time. You are out of isolation. You meet this woman. She's intriguing.
Yes.
Okay. And then we're 4 weeks in. Did you feel like God was releasing you to date, or did you feel like you were maybe rushing his timeline?
I was confused because remember, she was thinking of me as a client, and I was starting to get my,
Right.
heartstrings pulled a little bit. So very confused because I'm thinking, wait a minute, God, I didn't ask to send that message. You did. And now, but again, so, oh man, I'm glad you brought this up. Okay, so divorce is miserable. It's awful. There's so many moving pieces. You're breaking apart families and things like that. I don't know her whole story, but I know that her divorce, I do know this much at this point. I know that she's in court all the time. There's child custody issues. There's all kinds of stuff. She wants the divorce done. It's not happening very, very fast. And I don't think it's a good idea to date while you're going through a divorce. I don't. When I look at it, friends who have tried to do it, and I look at others who have, and I see you're already in a big mess. Why make it messier and start dating somebody in the middle of a divorce? That makes sense?
Sure.
So from a life principle point, I understood, like, oh, this is not good. This is not good timing. I don't know her whole situation. I don't know her timelines. But I know that even though she's moved to Xenia, the thing's not done yet. And I know that our conversations are still just friendly.
Sure.
So we haven't crossed any romantic lines or anything like that. Again, I'm a client to her.
Right.
To me, I'm like, who is this person? I'm starting to get a little intrigued.
Absolutely.
To the point where I've even told a couple of my close friends, Sarah Emerson, she worked for me in the office, and my friend Devin that I just mentioned. I did tell my mom. I'll be honest, my mom was very nervous. Because then she starts stalking. She's like, who is this person that my son's interested in?
Right.
And so she has lots of questions. And of course I'm like, Mom, just friends. And then of course I have to tell them all that, I kind of got the Dear John and, go away, which they're all like, what? Wait a minute. I thought you were becoming friends with this person. But anyways.
Yeah. So you get a series of Dear John messages.
Yes.
She's trying to talk herself out of this. You realize she's going through a divorce. I think you mentioned to me a few times that your list that you created was no drama. And so,
oh my goodness, yes.
So you're like, hey, well, maybe this doesn't meet the criteria anyway. And so you're obviously bummed at this point. Yeah.
Oh, I'm bummed. Yeah.
Yeah. So what's the timeline? She cut you off, and your friends are like, oh, I'm sorry, man.
Yeah, this is April. So this is in April. Oh man, there's another God moment that comes up. It's about 4 weeks after we start communicating, and I'm like, okay. So remember, I'm still going up to the lake on the weekends. I'm going up to Michigan. One of those times when I was at the lake, it was May of 19. I was in a really rough spot. I remember I was walking a lot. I was walking around the lake, doing a lot of work at the cabin, but one particular morning, it was a Sunday morning, May 5th. I was up early, about 5 a.m., walking around the lake and talking to God, listening to music, probably Need to Breathe. That was my go-to. Still is, actually. But I turned the corner. I remember I turned the corner and was heading down to the docks of the lake, and the sun was just coming up. There was still fog on the water. It was an amazing picture. I took a picture of it, took several pictures that morning, but man, God just met me in an unbelievable way. And it was one of those defining moments where God said, I've got this. I've got this. In fact, I knew we were going to talk about this today, so I actually brought up a couple of the posts from way back then. And here's what I wrote that morning. It says, this is a picture that I took down by the lake. It has become a symbol of my recent life's journey. I actually took a picture and I blew it up and put it by my back door. I find myself looking at it almost daily. Notice the new growth of spring bursting out of the dead of winter and the new leaves beginning to bud on all the trees. The path is a reminder to me of this new journey I'm taking towards something new and amazing. I thank God for his faithfulness during the dead and dry times. I thank him for the promises of new life and growth. The future may be unknown, but his promises remain the same. And man, it was an impactful morning, and I never forgot it. I took a picture of it, and I put it on my wall. I didn't want to forget, but it was God just telling me that, man, you're in the dead of winter, but spring's coming, and I've got something new and amazing for you. And crazy thing was, man, just a week or two later, a friend of mine, he saw the post and he said, hey, I wrote a poem. Your picture so inspired me. I couldn't help it. And if you want, please share it. And he wrote, because it's basically a dock going out into the lake. He says, he wrote a poem. He called it Journey. He said, my first steps on a journey. My first steps on a journey that many feet have trod. My heart is ready for something healing, so I place my trust in God. The path is worn and weathered. Once living, it's now dead, trampled on by millions who walk the path ahead. Perspective changes everything. It's the direction of my eyes when watching steps that others take. Then there my future lies. So I'll recognize the beauty that surrounds the path I'm on, embracing this great adventure as God writes me a new song. I'll find joy in the unexpected and peace beyond compare. His plan unfolds before me, a new future he wants to share.
Dude, what an amazing poem. And those who are listening, obviously you can hear the emotion. I can see the tears welling up in your eyes, man. And I got to think, like, this literally takes you back to those moments where you were just in despair. It was such a tough time. And you're just like, God, what are you doing? How and why did you allow this to happen to me? And me to be in a place of isolation and in a place where I'm lonely, and for God to meet you on that dock and give you that promise. Man, I mean, what does that mean to you now looking back?
Oh, I've had lots of God moments since then, but I could have never imagined or picked or guessed the kind of person that God was about to reveal and share with me. We always use the term too good to be true, but in this case, it really, really was. It was too good to be true.
wanted to pull up the actual clip and just pull apart 50 or so seconds so people could hear Michael's voice of the exact video that you're referring to.
I said I've kind of been in like major survival mode, and what do I share with people? And I just want to be more open and more honest and share appropriate things. And what I want my focus to be is that God is faithful and God is good through the muck and the junk and through all of it, through the pain. And I believe that there is beauty, that God makes beauty out of the ashes of our lives. And that's my hope and prayer for this in all of our lives, and honestly in your lives too, for whatever hard times that you guys are going through. There's nothing fun or easy about these situations, but I just want to share more of how we're trusting God.
That's good.